The marketplace was loud, full of voices, dust, and smells. Merchants shouted about their goods, aliens bargained, and children ran barefoot through the crowd. In the middle of all this noise, one voice was very small, almost too soft to hear, yet it carried something that made people stop for a moment. "I can clean your boots, human. Just feed me until you're full," whispered a thin alien girl. She was kneeling on the dirty ground, her knees pressed against stone, her hands shaking. Her clothes were torn rags, her face pale, and her eyes hollow from hunger. Her skin, once bright with the colors of her people, now looked faded, almost gray. She bowed her head low, not daring to look up at the man she was speaking to. The human traveler stood frozen. He had only come to the marketplace to buy supplies, some food, water, maybe a spare tool for his ship. He had not expected this. People were moving around him, pretending not to see the girl. A few aliens laughed at her weak voice. One merchant kicked dust in her direction and muttered, "Pathetic." The girl did not move. She kept her forehead low, her thin arms trembling. Her voice came again, cracked and dry. "Please, human, I can polish, I can scrub, I can make them shine, just one meal, just until you are full." The man glanced around. No one was helping her. In fact, the crowd seemed to enjoy her suffering. Some children threw small stones at her back. She winced but did not rise. She simply whispered the same words again. Something inside the human stirred. He had seen beggars before, on Earth, and even more so on alien worlds. But this felt different. There was something in her tone, something in her eyes when she dared to lift them for a second. Desperation, yes, but also dignity, as if she had not always been like this. He crouched down slowly. The girl tensed, expecting perhaps a kick or a slap. Instead, he spoke softly. "What is your name?" Her lips opened, then closed again. She lowered her head. "Names are useless for those who are forgotten." The human frowned. "Not to me. Tell me." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Lyra," she whispered. The name felt heavy in the air, as if it had not been spoken for a long time. The human nodded. "Lyra," he repeated, as if promising not to forget it. A merchant nearby barked a laugh. "Don't waste your time, off-worlder, that one is cursed. She owes more than she could ever pay, better let her starve." The human ignored him. He reached into his bag and pulled out a packet of food. It was simple. Bread, dried meat, a flask of water. But to the girl it was as if he had drawn a mountain of gold. Her eyes widened, glowing faintly in the dim light. She shook her head weakly. I cannot pay you back. If you feed me, they will punish me more. I will be beaten." "I didn't ask for payment," he said firmly. "Eat." His voice was calm but strong, like a command that could not be ignored. Slowly, with trembling hands, Lyra reached for the bread. She touched it as if it might vanish. When she took a bite, her whole body shook. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she chewed, tasting real food for the first time in days. She tried to eat slowly, but hunger pushed her to devour it. The crowd whispered. Some shook their heads. Others looked at the human with disgust. One alien hissed, "Fool, you'll regret helping her." The human said nothing. He only watched as Lyra drank from the flask, water dripping down her chin. She coughed, then smiled faintly, though her lips were cracked. When she had eaten enough to calm her shaking, she looked up at him properly for the first time. Her eyes were large, almost glowing, but filled with deep sorrow. "Why?" she asked, softly. "Why would you give me food? No one else does. They all pass by. They all laugh." He shrugged lightly. "Because you asked. Because you needed it." She lowered her head again, whispering words he almost didn't hear. "No one has ever chosen me." Before he could reply, a shadow moved at the edge of the marketplace. A tall figure in dark clothes stood watching. The crowd seemed to shift, avoiding him. Lyra noticed and froze. Her face turned pale. The human followed her gaze. The man in the shadows did not speak, did not move closer. but his eyes were locked on Lyra. She trembled, gripping the last piece of bread in her hand like a weapon she could never use. The human leaned closer. "Who is that?" Her voice was almost a breath. "The one who owns my debt." And with those words, the warm moment turned cold. The marketplace noise seemed to fade. The human realized he had stepped into something far more dangerous than he expected. Feeding one starving girl had already made him a target. But when he looked at her thin face, her desperate eyes, he knew one thing for sure. He could not walk away now. The sun was setting over the marketplace, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. The crowd was starting to thin, merchants closing their stalls and children running home. But in one quiet corner, everything felt tense. A human traveler sat on a low stone ledge while beside him, the alien girl named Lyra clutched the last piece of bread with trembling hands. She had eaten, but her body still shook. Hunger was not something that ended with one meal. Her stomach had been empty for too long, and though she was now calmer, her weakness was clear. Her hands shook, even as she tried to hide them. Her breathing was slow, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. The human watched her carefully. He had seen soldiers starve during wars, miners collapse from overwork, even children left behind in ruins. But there was something about this girl, something more than hunger. She carried a weight he could not see, and it scared her even to accept kindness. "You need more," he said finally. She looked up quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, if I take too much, they'll see, they'll know, they'll—" Her voice broke and she lowered her gaze again. "Who are they?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she chewed on the bread slowly, staring at the ground. The human followed her eyes, noticing how her toes curled against the dirt, how she sat as if ready to run at any second. Finally, she whispered, "Collectors, the ones who own my debt. If I take food that is not from them, they punish me. If someone gives me kindness, they punish me even harder." The human's jaw tightened. He remembered the tall figure in the shadows, the one watching from across the marketplace. He had felt the cold eyes even after the man disappeared into the crowd. "Why do they let you beg if they control you?" he asked. Lyra let out a bitter laugh. Though it was so weak, it sounded more like a cough.
"Begging brings shame. That is the point. They want me to crawl, to bow, to be dirt. Every coin I earn, every scrap I take, they count it. But it is never enough. It is never meant to be enough." The human stayed silent for a moment. The noise
of the marketplace returned around them. Footsteps, shouts, the clatter of closing stalls. But here in this corner it felt like only the two of them existed. She finished the bread, licking the crumbs from her hand like a starving animal. Then she froze, realizing how it must look. She quickly lowered her head and said, I can still clean your boots, that was the deal." The man glanced down at his boots. They were dusty from travel, but he shook his head. "Forget the boots. You've done enough." Her eyes widened in confusion. "No, I must. If I don't work, I owe more. If I don't serve, I am nothing." "You are not nothing," he said firmly. The words hit her harder than he expected. She stared at him, as if she had never heard such a thing in her life. Her lips trembled. Then she quickly looked away, hiding the tears forming in her eyes. Before he could say more, a sound came from behind them. Heavy boots on stone. The human turned his head, and his hand moved closer to his belt, where he kept a small knife. 3 aliens stood there, broad-shouldered and dressed in patched armor. Their faces carried the same cruel smirk and their eyes locked on Lyra. "Well, well," one of them said, his voice deep and mocking. "What do we have here? Our little debt girl finding herself a sponsor?" Lyra froze. Her body shrank, her hands clutching her stomach as if trying to make herself invisible. She whispered, "Don't speak. Don't fight. Please." But the human could already see the situation clearly. These were not random thugs. These were the collectors she had spoken of, The tallest of them stepped closer, pointing a clawed finger at Lyra. You think you can eat without permission? You think you can beg outside your zone? He raised his hand as if to strike her. The human stood. His body blocked the girl, his stance firm. Enough. The alien laughed. Enough? Who are you, off-worlder? You don't belong here. This one is property. Our property. The human's voice was calm, but sharp like steel. She is not property. The words cut through the air like a blade. The crowd, still nearby, began to turn their heads. Whispers spread. Some laughed at the foolish human. Others held their breath, waiting for the fight. The collectors sneered. Big words. Let's see if you can back them up. The human knew what was coming. His hand tightened on the knife hidden at his side. He was only one man, but he had fought before, on worlds where survival meant being faster, sharper, and braver than those who wanted you dead. But before anything could happen, the girl suddenly cried out, grabbing his arm. Her voice was desperate, shaking. Please don't fight them, they'll kill you, they'll kill us both. Her grip was weak, yet it carried all the weight of her fear. Her whole body trembled as she clung to him, begging him not to stand up for her. The human looked down at her, then back at the three collectors. He could see it now, the life she had been living. Always hungry, always begging, always terrified, and always alone. But not anymore. He spoke quietly, but loud enough for her to hear. I won't let them take you. Her breath caught, her eyes widened, and for the first time she believed he meant it. The collectors stepped closer, ready to strike. The crowd waited for blood. But inside Lyra, something had already changed. For the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope, and that hope began with one meal, and one human who chose to see her. The night air was colder than the human expected. The busy marketplace had grown quiet, its stalls shut, its alleys filled with shadows. But the echoes of what had happened still clung to the streets. Lyra walked beside him, her steps small and hesitant, glancing back every few moments as if expecting the collectors to leap from the darkness. The human had driven them off, not with blades, not with blood, but with words and the sharp weight of his stare. Still, he knew they were not finished. Men like that never walked away forever. They would return. They would claim what they thought belonged to them. And Lyra knew it too. She hugged her thin arms around herself, her ragged clothes barely keeping the chill away. Her eyes were fixed on the ground. She did not speak until they turned into a side alley where the torches were dim and the stones wet from dripping pipes. You shouldn't have stopped them, she whispered. The human glanced at her. I wasn't going to let them hit you. Her head shook quickly, strands of faded hair falling across her face. You don't understand. They don't just punish me for defiance. They punish me for kindness too. Now they will come after you. And after me. It would have been easier if you walked away. Easier for who? His voice was quiet but strong. She looked up at him then, her eyes bright in the gloom. For you. For anyone who tries to help me. People here already laugh at me, but the collectors, they are cruel. They enjoy breaking those who dare to care. The human's jaw tightened. He had seen this before, in war camps, in broken colonies, on planets where power belonged to those with no mercy. Debt was just another kind of chain, and chains were always forged by hands that loved control. Tell me, he said, slowing his steps, what debt keeps you here? Why do they claim you? Lyra stopped walking. Her body seemed to curl into itself, as though the question itself was dangerous. For a long moment she said nothing, her lips pressed tight. But finally, in a small voice, she answered, My family was once more. We were merchants, respected. My father owned ships. My mother traded goods across 3 systems. We were not rich, but we were safe. Her eyes grew distant, remembering a life far away from the filthy alleys. Then one deal went wrong. A shipment lost, a partner betrayed us. The debts fell on my father's name. When he could not pay, the collectors came. They took the ships. They took the house. They took my parents. She stopped again, her throat closing. The human waited. He did not press her. When she continued, her voice was softer than the wind. I was the last piece left. They said I must pay. They gave me rags and sent me to the streets. Every day I beg. Every coin I earn goes to them. But it never ends. They raise the debt higher each season. I am worth more to them starving than free. Her words trembled into silence. The human felt something burn inside him. He had heard many stories of cruelty across the stars, but this one clawed deeper than most. A girl robbed of family, reduced to a tool, living each day with nothing but fear. He looked at her fragile figure and wondered how she had survived this long. Lyra, he said slowly, you don't belong to them. She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and broken. Everyone belongs to someone. You should know that by now, even you. Not me, he answered firmly. And not you either. Her eyes searched his face, confused, as if he spoke a language she had never heard. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. Hope was dangerous. Before she could speak, movement stirred behind them. The human's hand went to his knife again. From the shadows of the alley, 2 small children ran past, dirty, barefoot, carrying stolen fruit. Lyra flinched, then relaxed as the children vanished into the night. See, she said bitterly. Everyone here is chained. By hunger, by fear, by debt. It never ends. The human took a step closer to her. Chains can be broken. Her lips trembled, and for a heartbeat her face softened. But then the fear returned. She shook her head. Not mine. You don't understand. The collectors, they are connected. If one of them is hurt, the others come. If one of them is challenged, the debt grows worse. Even if I ran to another world, they would follow. He thought about her words. She was right. The kind of system that fed on fear never released its prey. But still, something in him refused to accept it. Then we won't run, he said, finally. She stared at him, wide-eyed. What? We won't run. We'll face them. Together. Her mouth opened, then closed. She could not understand him. No one had ever spoken like that to her. People avoided her. People laughed at her. Some gave coins to mock her, not to help. But this human, this stranger, was saying the unthinkable. The silence stretched between them until finally she whispered, Why? Why would you risk yourself for me? The human looked at her, his expression steady. Because no one should live on their knees. Her breath caught. She wanted to cry, but she held it back, biting her lip. She had been punished for tears before. Yet something inside her shifted. Small, fragile, but real. In the distance, the echo of boots on stone grew louder. The collectors were hunting, again. Lyra's face turned pale. They've found us. The human stood straighter, his hand firm on his knife. His heart was calm, steady, as if he had been waiting for this. Then let them come, he said, and for the first time in years, Lyra felt that maybe, just maybe, her chains could break. The sound of boots echoed through the alley, heavy and certain. Lyra's breath quickened, her thin frame trembling as she pressed herself against the damp stone wall. The human stayed where he was, his back straight, his knife hidden but ready. He had faced worse odds before, battlefields where explosions lit the sky, raids where survival meant one wrong move could kill you. But this was different. This wasn't about him. This was about the girl clutching her arms, too afraid even to breathe. 3 figures stepped into view, the same collectors from before, their faces cruel and confident. Behind them, the tall man from the marketplace appeared at last, his long coat dragging across the stones, his eyes fixed on Lyra like a hunter watching a wounded animal. Well, the leader said with a grin, our little debt girl has found herself a protector. How sweet. He tilted his head at the human. Do you know what happens to those who get in our way, off-worlder? The human did not answer. His silence was stronger than words. The collector chuckled, flashing yellowed teeth. They end up owing too, and debt never ends. He took a step closer, but the human raised his knife just enough for the blade to glint in the torchlight. The movement was small, but it froze the air between them. "Stay where you are," the human said calmly. His voice was low, but it carried weight. Lyra tugged at his sleeve in panic. "Please," she whispered, "don't fight them. You can't win. They'll kill you." But he did not move. He placed himself firmly between her and the collectors. His choice was already made. The tall man in the coat finally spoke, his voice smooth and cold. "You think you can change her fate? She is dead. She is ours. That is the law here." The human's eyes narrowed. "Law is not slavery. Law is not chains." The tall man smirked. "You speak as if words matter, but here, only power matters." He snapped his fingers. The three collectors drew crude blades and began to circle. Lyra's heart pounded so loudly she could hear nothing else. She wanted to scream, to beg, to run, but her legs would not move. She remembered every beating, every punishment, every time someone had tried to stand for her and failed. She couldn't let it happen again. "Please," she cried. "I'll go with them. Don't do this for me." But the human only said, "You are not theirs, and you will not go back." The first collector lunged, blade flashing. The human sidestepped quickly, his knife striking the man's wrist. The collector yelped, dropping his weapon. The human pushed him back into the wall. The other two attacked together, one swinging high, the other low. The human ducked, his boots scraping on stone. He blocked one strike with his arm guard and shoved his knee into the second man's stomach. The alley exploded with grunts, curses, and the clang of blades. Lyra covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She had never seen anyone fight for her, not like this. People looked away when she was beaten. Some even laughed. But this stranger fought as if her life mattered. The human's knife flashed again, carving a line across one collector's arm. The man fell back, cursing. The last one swung wildly, rage filling his eyes, but the human caught his arm, twisted, and sent him crashing onto the ground. The fight was brutal but short. Soon, the three collectors were groaning on the stones, their weapons scattered. The human stood above them, chest rising and falling, but his stance steady. The tall man in the coat had not moved. He watched, his smirk gone, his eyes sharp. He stepped forward slowly, clapping once. "Impressive," he said softly. "But you don't understand. This isn't victory. This is the beginning of your debt. Hers doubled tonight, and now, yours begins." The human kept his knife ready. "I owe you nothing." The man tilted his head, amused. "That is what they all say." He turned his gaze to Lyra. "You should have known better, girl. Every kindness comes with pain. Tomorrow you'll wish he had left you to starve." Then, without another word, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving his injured men to stumble after him. Silence filled the alley. Only Lyra's sobs broke. She sank to the ground, her body shaking. "You don't understand. You've made it worse. They'll never stop now. They'll hunt us. They'll—" The human knelt in front of her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Lyra, look at me." She shook her head. "No. No. You don't know what they do to people who defy them." "I've seen men like them," he said, firmly. "And I've seen them fall. They aren't gods, they aren't chains unless you let them be." Her tear-filled eyes met his. "Why are you doing this?" He paused, searching for words. Then he said simply, "Because it's the right choice. Because someone should have made it for you long ago." Her lips trembled. No one had ever chosen her. No one had ever stood between her and the world. And now this human, this stranger, was risking everything. She wanted to protest again, to push him away, but the words died in her throat. For the first time in years, she felt something stronger than fear. It was fragile, small, but it was there. Hope. The human helped her to her feet. "Come on, we can't stay here." Together they walked deeper into the city's dark alleys. The collectors would come again, stronger, angrier, more determined. The human knew that. But he also knew He would not let them win. This was his choice, and he would see it through. The city did not sleep. Even in the darkest hours of the night, its alleys whispered with footsteps, its towers glowed with dull lights, and its shadows hid watchers waiting for weakness. Lyra moved close to the human as they walked, her bare feet silent on the stone. Every time she heard boots in the distance, she flinched, expecting the collectors to appear again. The human led her toward an old building at the edge of the district. Its walls were cracked, its roof sagging, but it offered cover. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rusted iron. The human lit a small lantern, placing it between them. Its glow softened the fear in her face, but only a little. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the silence. He looked at her calmly. "I already told you. I wasn't going to let them take you." Her eyes shimmered, but she shook her head. "You don't understand. Every act of kindness here has a cost. The collectors will not forget what you did. They'll punish me first. Then, they'll come for you." The human leaned back against the wall. His eyes were steady, sharp in the lantern light. "Then let them come." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "Why are you not afraid? Everyone else fears them. Even the merchants bow to them. Even guards pretend not to see them, but you speak as if they're nothing." He thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Because I've seen true monsters before. And compared to them, these men are only cowards with blades." His words sank into her like drops of water into dry soil. She wanted to believe him, yet her heart knew the price of defiance. She pulled her knees to her chest and whispered, "I don't want you to die because of me." The human studied her. She was so small, her body thin and fragile, yet her eyes carried storms of sorrow. He had seen warriors break under less, but she still breathed. She still lived. That meant strength. "You've survived this long," he said. "That takes more courage than you think." She laughed bitterly, covering her face. "Survived? If you call crawling through filth and begging for crumbs survival, then yes. But I am not brave. I am broken." "No," he said firmly. "You are alive, and that means you can fight. Chains are not forever." Her lips trembled. "Chains are forever here." The lantern flickered, and for a moment neither spoke. Outside, a dog barked. Somewhere distant, a shout echoed through the streets. Finally, Lyra whispered, "My mother used to tell me stories. She said debts could be paid, chains could be broken, hope could return, but she was wrong. The collectors took her first." Her voice cracked. "They laughed while they dragged her away. And now, I wonder if hope is just a cruel trick." The human's jaw tightened. He wanted to rage at the unseen hands that had done this, but anger would not help her now. Instead, he placed a hand on his chest. "I'll tell you something. On my world, when hope is gone, people make their own. They don't wait for it, they fight for it. That's what I'm doing. That's what you will do too." Her eyes widened at his certainty. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice broke. "And if the price is death?" He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Then it's better than living as property." The words struck her like a blade of truth. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not look away. For the first time, someone spoke to her not as a beggar, not as a debtor, not as worthless, but as a person with a choice. Before she could answer, footsteps scraped outside the building. Lyra froze. The human's hand went instantly to his knife. Shadows moved against the crack in the door. The door swung open with a crash. 5 collectors stormed in, torches in their hands. The tall man in the coat stepped in behind them, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I told you," he said smoothly. "Every kindness has a cost. You fed her, stranger. Now the price is yours to pay." The human stood, knife ready, but Lyra grabbed his arm desperately. "No, please, they'll kill you," the tall man smirked. "He chose his fate when he chose you." The collectors fanned out, blades drawn, firelight dancing across their cruel faces. The human felt Lyra's trembling grip on his arm, but he did not pull away. His eyes were locked on the tall man. "You think you own her," he said, voice steady. "But she's not yours, and she never will be." The tall man chuckled. "Brave words. Let's see how long they last when your blood runs." He raised his hand. The collectors advanced. The fight was chaos. Steel clashed, torches flared, shadows leapt across the walls. The human moved fast, striking, blocking, forcing the men back, but there were too many. A blade slashed his arm, blood dripping. Another blow grazed his shoulder. Lyra screamed, pressing herself into the corner, unable to move. Every strike felt like it tore through her heart. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. She wanted to help, but she had nothing. Nothing but the weight of fear. Still, the human did not fall. Each time a blade cut him, he struck back, harder. Each time they cornered him, he forced a way out. His eyes never wavered. His stance never broke. Finally, one collector stumbled back, another dropped his torch, another fell to his knees, groaning. The others hesitated, their confidence shaken. The tall man stepped forward, his smirk gone, his voice sharp. "Enough! This isn't finished. You've bought her a night, maybe two. But debt doesn't vanish, it grows." He turned, retreating into the shadows with his wounded men. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving the room in silence broken only by Lyra's sobs. The human dropped to one knee, blood dripping from his arm. He breathed heavily, his body shaking from the fight, but his eyes stayed on her. "Lyra, it's all right, they're gone." She crawled to him, tears streaming down her face. "Why? Why do you keep fighting for me? You'll die. They won't stop." He caught her hand, gripping it firmly. His voice was quiet but unshakable. "Because you're worth it." She froze. No one had ever said that to her. Not once in her life. Her tears came harder, but they were not only of fear now. They were of something else. Something she had thought lost forever. Hope. The night bled, slowly into morning. Pale light leaked through the cracks of the ruined building where they had taken shelter. Dust floated in the beams, and the smell of smoke from the collectors' torches still clung to the air. The human sat against the wall, his arm bandaged with a strip torn from his own shirt. Across from him, Lyra sat quietly, hugging her knees, her eyes never leaving him. He should have been resting, but instead he watched the door, knife still within reach. Sleep was a luxury he could not afford, but more than danger, something else kept him awake. The fragile figure of the alien girl trembling like a candle flame. She broke the silence first, her voice a whisper. "You bled for me." He looked at her, his face calm despite the pain, in his arm. It was nothing. Her eyes widened, disbelief on her face. "Nothing? They cut you. You fought 5 men. You could have died, and you say it was nothing?" He shrugged lightly. "I've been hurt before. Wounds heal, but hunger, hopelessness, those kill slower and worse." Her lips trembled. "Then why me? I'm nothing. Just a debtor. Just a beggar." He leaned forward, his voice firm. "You are not nothing. You never were." The words hit her harder than the night's violence. She lowered her gaze, tears threatening to fall, but she forced them back. She had been told her whole life that she was worthless. To hear otherwise was like trying to breathe after drowning. The human reached into his bag, pulling out the last of his rations, a small loaf of bread and a piece of dried fruit. He tore the bread in half and handed it to her. Her hands shook as she took it. "No, you need this. You've already given me too much." "I've had enough before," he said simply. "You haven't." Her chest tightened. Slowly, she bit into the bread. The taste was simple, but it was warm, it was real, and it was shared. Every bite filled her with something she had almost forgotten. Comfort. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. She hid her face, ashamed. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you risking your life." He reached out, gently lowering her hands from her face. His voice was quiet but steady. Deserve has nothing to do with it. You are hungry. You are alive. That's enough. Her sobs broke free, raw and uncontrollable. She tried to apologize, but he shook his head. Don't say sorry for being human, he said. Then he smiled, faintly. Or for being not human. Same thing. She laughed through her tears, a weak, trembling sound, but it was real. For a while, they sat in silence, the fragile peace wrapping around them like a blanket. Outside, the city stirred awake, but here in this broken shelter there was only them. Finally, she spoke again, her voice small. They will come back. They always come back. And when they do, they'll hurt you worse. They'll hurt me worse. They'll never stop. The human nodded. Yes, they'll try. But we don't have to live in fear. She shook her head. That's all I've ever known. Fear and hunger. He leaned closer, his eyes locking with hers. Then let me show you something else. I'll feed you. Not just for a night. Not until I'm full, but forever. Her breath caught. She stared at him wide-eyed. Forever? He nodded. As long as I live, you won't beg again. Her hands covered her mouth, her whole body trembling. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. Yet the look in his eyes, calm, steady, unshaken, made her believe despite herself. Why? She whispered, her voice breaking. Why would you do this for me? He thought for a moment, then said softly, because once, someone fed me when I had nothing. Because kindness doesn't end with one meal, it's meant to grow. And because you deserve to live, Lyra, to really live. Her tears flowed freely now, but they were not only of sorrow. For the first time in years, they carried something else. Relief. The human leaned back, wincing at the pain in his arm. She noticed and crawled closer, her small hands clumsy as she tried to adjust the bandage. You're hurt because of me, she whispered. I'm alive because I chose, he replied. Her fingers froze. She looked up at him, eyes shining with something new. Gratitude, trust, a bond forming stronger than chains. She whispered, almost to herself, no one has ever chosen me. He placed his hand gently over hers. Then remember this. I chose you. The words settled into her heart like fire into cold ashes. For the first time since her family was taken, she felt warmth. Real warmth. Outside, the city roared to life again. Collectors whispered her name in the streets, plotting revenge. The price of kindness was not yet paid. But inside the broken shelter, something had been born, something the collectors could not steal or beat away. Hope, and with it, the promise of forever. The city was awake before the sun fully rose. Merchants shouted over one another. Carts rattled on uneven stones, and guards patrolled with lazy eyes, pretending not to notice the darker dealings in the alleys. But today, something different moved through the streets. A whisper, a rumor. A human had defied the collectors. A beggar girl had been protected. And debts, people said, had been challenged. Inside the ruined shelter, Lyra stirred. Her body ached from exhaustion, but her stomach was fuller than it had been in months, and her heart carried something unfamiliar. Calm. She blinked at the dim light, then turned. The human was already awake, standing at the doorway, watching the street. His injured arm was wrapped tighter now, his stance strong despite the fight. You should rest, she murmured. He glanced back at her, faint, amusement in his eyes. I will. After this is finished. Her chest tightened. She pushed herself up, hugging her knees. Finished? What do you mean? They won't stop, he said simply. Not unless we make them. You'll never be free while they claim you. So today it ends. Her eyes widened. No, you don't understand. The collectors are everywhere. They own the guards, they own the merchants, even the council bows to them. You can't fight all of them. He stepped closer, crouching so his eyes met hers. I don't need to fight all of them. I only need to break the chain that binds you. Once the debt is gone, they have no hold. Lyra's voice shook. But the debt, it's endless. They raise it whenever they want. It's not numbers, it's slavery. He nodded slowly. Then we'll show them she is not theirs to own. Her lips trembled. She wanted to stop him, to pull him back into hiding, but a spark inside her, the same spark that had grown since the moment he fed her, refused to let fear control her again. For the first time she whispered, "Then, I'll stand with you." He smiled faintly. Good. We'll need courage more than blades. The square, at the heart of the city, was always alive. Today it was crowded with merchants unloading goods, buyers shouting and thieves sneaking between them. At the center stood the collectors, bold in their confidence, laughing as they counted coins that were never truly theirs. And towering above them on the steps of the old council hall was the tall man in the coat. His presence was enough to keep guards silent and merchants obedient. When the human stepped into the square with Lyra beside him, heads turned. Whispers spread quickly. The foreigner had returned, and the debt girl was still alive. The tall man noticed immediately. His smirk curved slowly. You again? And still breathing. Impressive. His eyes shifted to Lyra, sharp and cold. And you? Still chained. The human's voice rang out clear across the square. No, not chained. Not anymore. The crowd stirred. People turned fully now, curious, cautious. Some laughed nervously. Others leaned in, hungry for rebellion, though too afraid to show it. The tall man spread his arms. Do you think words free her? Debt is debt. It binds tighter than iron. She belongs to us until the day she dies. The human stepped forward, his shoulders squared, his gaze unflinching. Then let everyone hear me now. Lyra's debt ends today. She is free. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe, but disbelief and fear tangled inside her. The tall man's smirk deepened. And who will decide that? You? A lone off-worlder with a knife? Do you know how many have tried to defy us? Do you know how they ended? I know how you end, the human replied, his voice steady. Not with strength, but with fear. You thrive because everyone bows, but not today. The collectors around the square shifted uneasily. The people in the crowd murmured louder. For years they had watched the collectors grow fat on the misery of others. For years they had stayed silent. But now someone was speaking what they had all buried. The tall man snapped his fingers. 10 collectors stepped forward, blades drawn. The guards looked away, pretending not to see. Lyra's breath shook. She gripped the human's arm, whispering, "We can't fight them all." He leaned closer, his voice calm. "We don't have to. Watch." He stepped into the center of the square, raising his voice so all could hear. "You all know her. You've seen her beg, you've thrown stones, you've laughed, but do you know why she is there? Not because she owes. Because they want her broken. Because they profit from her chains. How many of you have debts just like hers?" Silence swept the square. Eyes dropped, hands clenched, jaws tightened. The truth stung. The human continued. They tell you debt never ends, that you are property. But I say this, no one is property, not her, not you. If they can raise debts forever, then debts mean nothing. And if debts mean nothing, then none of you are chained. A murmur grew, louder, bolder. Merchants shifted uneasily. Some guards straightened, unsure. The tall man's face darkened. Silence. Him. He hissed. The collectors advanced, but something stopped them. The crowd was moving, not scattering in fear, closing in. Faces once filled with resignation now burned with anger. Men and women who had lived under the collector's shadow for years finally saw a crack in the wall. One voice shouted, He's right. They keep us poor. Another cried, they took my brother for a debt that was already paid. The murmurs became shouts. Stones flew, not at Lyra, not at the human, but at the collectors. The tall man's smirk faltered for the first time. He stepped back, his coat swirling. His voice snapped, fall back. The collectors hesitated, surrounded not just by one man but by a square full of people who had finally remembered their strength. The human stood tall, pulling Lyra to his side. His voice rang out one last time. Lyra is free, and so are all of you, if you choose it. The crowd roared. When it was over, the collectors had fled into the shadows, their power broken in the square where they once ruled. The people spoke in excited whispers, some already planning how to resist further, how to tear away the chains that had bound them for so long. Lyra stood at the center, staring at the human in disbelief. Her hands shook, her lips parted, her eyes full of tears. You really did it, you freed me. He turned to her, his expression calm but warm. No, Lyra. You freed yourself the moment you stood beside me. Her tears fell, but her smile broke through at last. She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. For the first time, she did not feel the weight of chains. She felt only the warmth of a promise. Together, they walked out of the square, the morning sun breaking over the city. The streets that had once spat on her now whispered her name differently, not as a beggar, not as a debtor, but as someone chosen. A new beginning had come, and with it, the forever he had promised.